My child, listen, for I come to you in the stillness before the world awakens, in the hour when shadows lose their strength and the first breath of dawn carries the whisper of my voice. I draw you close because your spirit has been restless, sensing something approaching, something you could not name, something that pressed against the edges of your life like a storm waiting to break. You felt it days ago, a subtle tightening in your chest, a quiet alertness in your soul, the sense that an unseen movement had begun. I did not ignore this stirring within you, for it was I who placed it there to prepare you for what was coming. Yet before it could reach you, before its intention could take shape, I stepped into its path. Come nearer, my child, and let my word steady you. Adhuratahu will not touch you. What sought you will not find you. What tried to rise against you has already been dismissed from your destiny. I am the one who stands between you and every unseen danger, and though the enemy formed a plan with precision, gathering pieces, stirring hearts, and working through whispered conversations, it collapsed the moment my hand went forth. You did not see it, but heaven shifted, and the path of that threat was shattered. I speak to you now because I want you to know you were never unprotected, not for a moment. Even when your mind wandered, even when your heart felt vulnerable, even when exhaustion made you feel as though you were standing alone, I surrounded you. And I watched over someone connected to you as well, someone whose destiny intertwines with yours in ways you have not yet fully understood. Your soulmate felt this disturbance before you did, not in clear images, but in fragments of fear, unexpected heaviness, and sudden moments of silence where their spirit trembled without explanation. They did not know it, but their unease was tied to what was coming toward you. My child, breathe deeply now. Let my presence calm what your body has carried. This early hour calling is not to frighten you, but to anchor you. I want you to walk through this day knowing you were shielded from something that had been planned long before this moment. There was a movement in the spiritual realm, an attempt to cross into your life with disruption and confusion. But I stopped it. I halted it before its first impact. I dismantled the intention and scattered the energy behind it. Nothing meant for your harm will prevail while my hand is upon you. You must understand this. You are stepping into a season where your prayers, your intuition, and even your silence carry weight. The enemy knows this and fears it. That is why the attempt began in the shadows, hoping to reach you unprepared. But I am your preparation. I am your covering. And on this day, the 8th day of this month, I bring you this message not as a warning, but as a revelation of what did not happen, of what I prevented, of what you will never have to face because I intervened. Before you move further into this journey, my child, pause and receive this truth. What I stopped was real. What I blocked was intentional. What I removed was close. And yet you remain untouched. This is my doing. If these words have reached the place in you that felt uneasy, breathe and let my peace settle again. And if your spirit recognizes the weight of this message, type "I am covered" in the comments, so that this declaration aligns with your destiny. My child, come closer, for I must show you what moved toward you before my hand intervened. It did not come loudly. It did not come openly. It approached like a shifting silhouette between worlds, a presence that carried intention, but hid its face. You did not see it, yet your spirit sensed the disturbance. You felt it in the way your thoughts suddenly tightened, in the way your sleep felt shallow, in the strange moments where your heart paused as though listening for something unseen. This shadow was not a person alone, nor a circumstance alone. It was a convergence of energy, emotion, and influence drawn together by someone who wished not to see you rise. This presence began forming days before you noticed anything. It traveled through whispered conversations, altered moods, and secret frustrations. It hovered around someone connected to your life, someone whose emotions had been stirred by jealousy, misunderstanding, or fear. It was through them that the shadow tried to enter, not because they desired your downfall, but because someone else desired access to your peace, and this was the doorway they attempted to use. You did not open that door, my child. Something in you resisted without knowing why. That resistance was me. I watched the shadow move with intention, circling, studying you, trying to map the soft places of your heart. It approached in moments where you felt tired, vulnerable, or unsure. But every time it tried to advance, your spirit rose. Even in your weakness, you were not uncovered. You prayed without realizing you were praying. You whispered my name when your heart felt heavy. You spoke words of gratitude on days you felt nothing at all. These small acts built a barrier thicker than steel, unseen yet unbreakable. This shadow carried more than negativity. It carried plots. It carried words that were rehearsed but never spoken. It carried the desire of someone who wished to disrupt your stability, hoping that by disturbing you, they could influence the one connected to your destiny. The enemy rarely attacks you alone, my child. It attempts to strike where connections exist. It tries to distort what is divinely aligned by making you question yourself, your intuition, or your worth. But each time this shadow leaned in, my presence intensified, and the path it hoped to follow dissolved. There was also a moment, a very specific one, when your soulmate felt a sudden pressure in their spirit. It came as a heaviness behind their sternum, a moment of stillness that frightened them because it carried no explanation. It was the instant the shadow reached closest to you. It brushed against the edge of your destiny, trying to infiltrate through the emotional bond the two of you share. But the fear your soulmate felt did not weaken them. It alerted me. Their trembling called heaven into motion. Understand this, my child. What moved toward you was not greater than my protection, but it was real. It attempted to travel through miscommunication, through old wounds, through unhealed emotions of people around you. It sought a crack, a moment of vulnerability, an open gate. Yet every gate was guarded. Every avenue was blocked. Every whisper intending harm dissolved before it could be carried out. You may wonder why I reveal this now. It is because you must know your discernment is sharpening. You are not imagining the shifts you feel. You are not overreacting. You are spiritually sensitive because you are spiritually chosen. You detect things before they manifest because your destiny requires awareness. And, my child, the shadow that approached you on this 8th day did not succeed. It broke. It scattered. And vanished. Not because it turned away voluntarily, but because I forced it to retreat and remove its influence entirely. Let this truth settle gently within you. You were protected from what you never saw, and I am the one who ensured it never touched your life. My child, listen closely, for before the shadow ever reached your doorstep, it touched the edges of your soulmate's spirit. They felt it first, not because they were the target, but because their heart is tied to yours in ways they do not fully understand. Their soul reacted to the pressure forming around you, as if some invisible current swept through them and left them shaken. They tried to brush it off, tried to convince themselves it was only stress or exhaustion, but something deeper within them knew something was approaching your life, something they could not see but could feel with undeniable intensity. There was a night recently when they sat alone, restless and unable to explain the heaviness pressing on their chest. They kept checking their phone, glancing at messages, scrolling through conversations, searching for anything that would ease the unease inside them. Their heart beat with an unfamiliar tension because their spirit was sensing danger that didn't belong to them. You may not have known what they felt, but heaven witnessed it. Their confusion, their worry, their sudden silence, it was all connected to what was moving toward you. Your soulmate carries emotions they rarely express. They appear strong to others, even composed, but when it comes to you, their spirit is fragile, open, exposed. They sense shifts in your life before you speak them. They feel the tremors of spiritual interference even when you remain calm. This is why the shadow targeted their atmosphere first. If the enemy could unsettle them, it believed it could distort the bond between you, create hesitation, stir distance, or ignite misunderstandings. But instead, their discomfort became the very thing that alerted heaven. There was a moment when they paused, placed a hand over their heart, and whispered a quiet prayer, not fully knowing why they prayed, not even directing it with words, but releasing a cry from the soul. That cry reached me. Their spirit called out on your behalf, and though they did not know it, they were interceding for you. Their fear brought angels into motion. Their unease shifted the atmosphere. Their trembling became a signal to heaven that something was approaching the one their heart is drawn to. Your soulmate is more spiritually tuned than they admit. They feel your silence, your distance, your burdens. They feel when something is chasing your peace. They feel when something is wrong even if you say nothing at all. That is why, in the days leading to this moment, they felt a strange tightness in their spirit whenever your name crossed their mind. It was as if something was trying to cloud their clarity, trying to distort their understanding of you, trying to push them into doubt or fear. But listen, my child, for this is where my intervention began. Their spirit resisted. Even in confusion, their heart leaned toward you, not away from you. Even in fear, they felt drawn to check on your energy, to think of you, to hold you in their quiet thoughts. Your soul chose connection instead of distance, and that choice weakened the very shadow that attempted to influence them. Their concern for you became a shield. You must know this: your soulmate is not as detached as you sometimes assume. They feel your presence even when you are silent. They carry your energy even when you are far. They notice shifts in your spirit even before you speak them aloud. And this time, their sensitivity became part of the divine protection surrounding you. So understand, my child, that what they felt was not random. It was not emotional instability. It was not confusion without cause. It was the spiritual impact of the shadow that approached you. And though they could not fight it in the natural, their very heartbeat stood as a barrier. You were protected not only by my hand, but by the one whose destiny intertwines with yours. Their fear woke heaven. Their concern summoned intervention. Their spirit helped stop what was coming toward you. My child, let me take you into the places where few eyes have seen, into the quiet corners of your soulmate's soul where they unraveled in silence. They did not tell anyone what they felt. They did not speak of the trembling in their chest, nor the way their hands grew still when your name surfaced in their thoughts. They hid the collapse behind a practiced calm, behind a routine that looked steady from the outside. But inside, something was breaking. Something fragile. Something sacred. Because the pressure they felt was never meant for them. It belonged to the shadow approaching you. There was a moment recently when they withdrew from others, retreating into a room or a car or a quiet hallway just to breathe. Their breathing trembled, shallow at first, then deeper as the realization grew that something was wrong. They felt overwhelmed by emotions they could not place, as though grief, fear, and longing had all flooded them at once. They leaned their head against a wall or a seat, letting their eyes close tightly, hoping the heaviness would fade. But it didn't. It lingered, pressing into the most vulnerable parts of them. This collapse was not weakness. It was spiritual sensitivity. Your soul reacted as if it were absorbing the impact on your behalf, cushioning you without even knowing it. And my child, I saw this moment. I watched them pace, sit, stand again, unsure whether to reach out to you or fall deeper into silence. Part of them feared burdening you. Part of them feared revealing too much. And part of them feared that if they reached for you in the wrong moment, you might misunderstand their intention. So they hid it, choosing silence over expression, even though silence made the weight heavier. Their thoughts raced. They questioned their worth. They wondered whether they were losing connection with you. They wondered if you were slipping away or if something unseen was interfering. They kept replaying old memories, old conversations, old moments where they felt secure with you, trying to anchor themselves in something real while the shadow attempted to distort everything. But the real collapse happened within their heart. They felt guilt for feeling distant from you, even though the distance wasn't theirs to carry. They felt fear that you were facing something they couldn't protect you from. They felt helpless, torn between reaching out and holding back. And in that tension, your heart cracked open, exposing every unspoken emotion they've been trying to keep contained. My child, there was a moment when they whispered your name without even realizing they did. A soft, trembling whisper birthed for longing and worry. That whisper shook heaven. That whisper sent angels closer. That whisper broke the final power of the shadow that attempted to advance toward you. Because in that moment of collapse, their heart aligned with truth, and truth always dismantles darkness. They sat for a long time afterward, staring at nothing, feeling everything. Their mind was overwhelmed, but their spirit was awakening. They may have wiped tears without understanding why they were crying. They may have felt a sudden urge to isolate themselves from noise and people. They may have reached for their phone and then pulled their hand back, afraid of what they might say. They may have felt the urge to pray even if they rarely pray out loud. All of these reactions were part of the spiritual battle you never saw. And I tell you this, my child, so you understand the depth of their connection to you. They are not indifferent. They are not distant. They are not careless with your presence. Their collapse proves how deeply they feel you, how strongly they sense when something is wrong, how instinctively they respond to shifts in your spirit. Their hidden breakdown became a turning point. It was in those quiet, fragile moments that my protection intensified around both of you. Their vulnerability became the doorway through which I poured strength. Their tears became the signal that released my intervention. You were not alone. They were not alone. Heaven hovered over both of you in the same breath. My child, lean in, for now I will reveal what was hidden beneath the surface, the true motive behind the shadow that moved toward your life. What approached you did not arise from random chaos. You were stirred, yawned, invited by someone whose heart carried quiet resentment, someone who watched you from a distance, someone who felt threatened by the light upon your life and the bond forming between you and your soulmate. This was not a stranger. This was not an outsider. This was someone close enough to know your patterns, close enough to observe your growth, close enough to feel eclipsed by the grace upon you. Their motive was not grand, but it was potent. It began with a seed of jealousy, a moment when they realized your presence held a weight they could not imitate. They watched the way your soulmate's eyes softened when thinking of you, the way conversations shifted when your name came up, the way your energy influenced the room even when you were not present. This stirred something dark within them, something they never confronted, something that grew roots in their insecurity. Instead of healing, they fed it. Instead of turning to me, they turned to whispers, manipulation, and subtle actions meant to disrupt. They spoke words behind closed doors, words coated in innocence but layered with intent, They exaggerated stories. They twisted truths. They sweetened lies in order to poison perception. They masked their envy behind concern, behind advice, behind commentary that looked harmless from the surface. But underneath, everything carried the same motive: to pull your soulmate away from you. What they did not know, my child, is that spiritual intentions echo louder than spoken words. The energy behind their actions created openings, tiny fractures in the atmosphere, places where the shadow found its entry point. They did not summon darkness intentionally, but their envy aligned with its frequency. And the shadow followed the trail of their intentions like smoke following a spark. This person believed disrupting your connection would elevate them. They believed making your soulmate doubt you would bring them closer. They believed weakening you would strengthen their position. But their motives were rooted in fear, not truth; in comparison, not confidence; in insecurity, not love. And everything birthed from such darkness inevitably collapses. Your soulmate sensed something was off. They didn't have evidence, but they felt it in the way conversations shifted, in the way certain remarks hovered too long, in the way they suddenly felt pressured to question what had never felt confusing before. These pressures did not come from their heart. They came from the words and emotions being projected onto them. And those projections stirred the very unrest that led to their collapse. But understand this, my child: the threat was not the person themselves. The threat was the energy their motive released. They were the doorway, not the attacker. Their jealousy created the channel, but they did not understand the spiritual consequence of their actions. They wanted influence, not destruction. Yet destruction is what jealousy always invites when left unchecked. What approached you was the spiritual accumulation of their resentment, their insecurity, their fear of being overshadowed by you. It wrapped itself in emotional influence. It traveled on unspoken tension. It tried to manifest as doubt, confusion, or misalignment between you and your soulmate. It believed it could shift your destiny by shifting perception. But destiny cannot be rewritten by jealousy, and truth cannot be undone by deception. What they meant for disruption became the very reason I intervened earlier than planned. Because, my child, no one can interfere with what I have aligned. No one can sever what I have intertwined. And no one can remove what I have placed upon your life. The motive behind the threat was hidden, but not from me. I saw the seed. I saw the jealousy. I saw the subtle attempts to derail what was sacred. And before their words could mature into consequence, I stepped in. I exposed the shadow, shattered its path, and prevented it from reaching you. Your intention may have stirred the storm, but my hand ended it. My child, listen closely now, for I must uncover the one whose jealousy became the opening through which the shadow attempted to enter. This revelation is not given to stir suspicion, but to free your spirit from the confusion that has hovered near you. The one who tampered with destiny is someone who has worn the mask of familiarity, someone who has lingered on the edges of your life or your soulmate's life with a smile that did not reflect their inner posture. Their outward gestures appeared harmless, even supportive, but their heart carried an envy that grew each time they witnessed the subtle bond between you and the one destined for you. Their jealousy was not loud. It was quiet, simmering, concealed beneath soft words and polite expressions. They watched your soulmate more closely than they ever admitted. They paid attention to their reactions, their choices, their feelings, especially when it came to you. They noticed the shift in your soulmate's energy when your presence crossed their mind. They noticed the change in their tone, the way their spirit lifted, the way their guard lowered. And each time this happened, something inside this jealous one tightened like a fist. They felt threatened, my child, not by your actions but by your anointing. Not by your presence, but by your purpose. Not by anything you did, but by everything you knew. They feared losing influence. They feared being overshadowed. They feared that your soulmate's heart was drifting toward you with a depth they could not control, predict, or replicate. And in their fear, they made choices that opened spiritual doors they did not understand. There was a conversation recently, small, subtle, cloaked in concern, where they planted a seed of doubt. They framed it as observation, as caution, as gentle advice. But beneath their tone, jealousy pulsed. They hoped to shift perception, to create hesitation, to stir questions in your soulmate's heart. Their words carried the vibration of insecurity, and that vibration called the shadow closer. They also rehearsed thoughts they never voiced aloud, thoughts that wished your connection would weaken, thoughts that entertained the idea of you fading from your soulmate's life. These internal conversations held spiritual weight. Even unspoken jealousy forms currents in the unseen realm. Even silent resentment releases signals that darkness responds to. And through these currents, the shadow found traction. My child, do not look for this person. You are not called to expose them. You are not called to confront them. You are not called to discern their identity. I reveal this to you so that you understand you were never the source of the disruption. You were never the problem. You were never the instability. You were the target of someone's insecurity, someone who misunderstood the favor on your life and feared what it meant for their own. This jealous one saw your light and believed it diminished theirs. They saw your influence on your soulmate's spirit and believed it threatened their position. They saw your presence and felt displaced by what they could not name. And instead of healing their wounds, they leaned into their shadows. But hear me now, they will not succeed. Their interference has already been dismantled. Their influence has been weakened. Their intentions have been intercepted. The shadow they unknowingly invited hath been scattered. Their emotional manipulation hath been exposed in the spiritual realm. Their motives hold no authority over what I have ordained. I do not judge them, for I understand the brokenness that fuels their envy. But I also do not allow brokenness to steer destiny. And so I have stepped in to correct what they attempted to distort. Your soulmate may not know the full truth, but they feel it. They sense the misalignment. They sense that someone around them has not been honest. They sense that something in the atmosphere shifted the moment your energy entered their life. Their awakening has already begun. And as for you, my child, stand in peace. You do not need to defend yourself. You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to fight a battle that heaven has already resolved. Your destiny is sealed, and no jealous heart can tamper with what I have decreed. My child, sit with me for a moment, for now I will reveal what unfolded behind the curtain of the natural world, in the quiet places of the unseen where destinies are tested and protected. You saw only fragments, only hints, only emotions passing through your spirit like distant echoes, but I saw everything in perfect clarity. I watched the conversations, the thoughts, the intentions forming long before they reached the surface. I saw the silent battles, the hidden motives, the shifts in energy around you and your soulmate. Nothing escaped my sight. I saw the moment when the jealousy in that person began to solidify into action. Their heart pulsed with insecurity, and with every heartbeat, a subtle intention formed, a desire to influence, to control, to redirect. They sat in a room, scrolling through messages or replaying interactions, analyzing your connection with your soulmate more deeply than they ever admitted. I watched as their mind crafted narratives, as they convinced themselves their interference was justified, as they allowed resentment to whisper suggestions that were not born of truth. I saw your soulmate hear their words. I saw the slight change in their expression, the confusion that flickered behind their eyes, the tension that settled in their chest. They could not fully understand why something felt off, why a shadow seemed to stretch between what they knew and what they were being told. I saw them wrestle internally, trying to reconcile truth with distortion, intuition with influence. Their spirit leaned toward you, but their mind hesitated under the pressure of someone else's opinions. I saw you too, my child. I saw the moments when you felt a sudden heaviness for no reason. I saw when your thoughts drifted into silence, when your heart seemed to pause as if listening for something hidden. I saw the nights when your sleep was shallow, when your dreams carried the residue of spiritual disturbance. You felt the effects of a battle you did not start. But even in your vulnerability, you remained covered. I saw the shadow travel, not like a creature, but like a vibration and energy of disruption shaped by emotion, drawn by insecurity, carried through unspoken intentions. It hovered around your soulmate first, seeking an entry point. It tried to amplify their fears, their doubts, their regrets. It tried to create distance between you and weaken the spiritual bridge connecting your hearts. But at every attempt, my presence intensified. I saw the moment your soulmate's spirit buckled, when their breathing grew unsteady and their pulse quickened. They did not know what was happening, but heaven did. I watched angels move swiftly, surrounding them, guarding the place where their heart cracked open in confusion. Your collapse was not ignored. It was observed with divine precision. And in that moment of vulnerability, the entire trajectory of the shadow shifted. I saw the enemy try to push closer to you, believing your weariness would create an opening. But what the enemy counted as weakness, I counted as surrender. I heard the smallest prayers, the whispered thoughts, the unspoken plea for clarity. I saw your spirit lift itself toward me without you realizing it. And that with the moment the shadow began to break. I saw every lie spoken about you, every distorted story, every manipulative undertone. I saw the weight it placed on your soulmate's heart. I saw how their spirit resisted even when their mind struggled. I saw how your name brought both comfort and confusion to them during this time. And I saw the threads of truth beginning to glow, rising slowly, quietly, steadily through the haze of deception. Nothing was hidden from me. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing was permitted to move unchecked. And when the shadow reached its closest point, when it attempted to cross the final boundary, I stood in its path. I stopped it. I dismantled it. I stripped it of power and dispersed it until nothing remained but fragments incapable of touching your life. My child, I saw everything. And because I saw, I acted. My child, come closer. For now I will take you into the moment the spiritual realm shifted, the moment heaven moved on your behalf with force so swift and precise that the shadow approaching you had no time to react. Intervention does not always come with thunder or trembling earth. Sometimes it comes in a breath, in a blink, in a ripple of unseen light that slices through darkness before the human mind can register danger. That is what happened for you. That is what unfolded in the moment you felt an unexplainable calm settle over you after days of subtle unrest. Heaven intervened the exact instant the shadow attempted to cross the final boundary between influence and impact. The moment it tried to reach your emotional core. The moment it attempted to touch your clarity. The moment it sought to plant confusion in your spirit, that was when my command went forth. A barrier rose, not made of stone or steel, but of divine authority, the kind that darkness has no language for and no weapon against. What was meant for you collided with my decree and shattered instantly. It began when your soulmate reached their breaking point. Their heart trembled, their breath quickened, and a wave of fear swept through them. But in that fear, their spirit turned toward you and toward me with a longing they could not articulate. at longing with a call. That trembling was a signal. Heaven responds not only to words but to the cries of the heart. And the heart of your soulmate cried out in a way that reached the throne room like a sudden burst of light. Your own spirit, though weary, was also reaching upward. In the hours before the intervention, you felt a pull toward silence, a push to pause, a moment where your soul leaned into me without effort. You may not have prayed with words, but your yearning for peace was its own prayer. That yearning met the cry of your soulmate in the spiritual realm, and the convergence of your two spirits created a line of fire that darkness could not cross. In that sacred moment, angels move. Not slowly, not softly. They moved like lightning, like streaks of divine intelligence cutting through obstruction. They surrounded you first, sealing the atmosphere around your mind and your emotions. Then they moved toward your soulmate, lifting the weight that had pressed upon their chest, clearing the fog that had clouded their thoughts, and breaking the subtle cords of influence that jealousy had wrapped around them. The jealous one's intentions dimmed instantly. Your words lost power. Their emotional projection lost direction. Their influence hit a spiritual wall it could not pass. They did not understand why things suddenly shifted, why their attempts no longer carried the same force, why their subtle control began slipping through their fingers. But heaven knew. You were protected. I intervened with precision. I extracted the shadow from the path it traveled. I severed every line it used, every doorway it exploited, every crack it attempted to widen. The spiritual atmosphere around you changed, though you could not see it with your eyes. You may have felt it, though a sudden exhale, a wave of peace, a sense that something had lifted without explanation. That was me, clearing the air. Your soul felt it too. They did not understand the relief, the clarity, the sudden calm that replaced the emotional collapse they had endured. They only knew that something shifted, something lifted, something ended. The pressure that had tormented their spirit dissolved in an instant. My child, the intervention was not only protection, it was reset. Destiny realigned. Truth reclaimed its ground. Every attempt to distort your path was corrected in one breath of divine authority. You were shielded. You were defended. You were delivered before you even knew deliverance was necessary. My child, now let me show you what unfolded after heaven intervened. For when the shadow broke, the lies that fed it began to crack as well. Deception cannot survive once the light intensifies. Manipulation cannot stand when truth begins to rise. And on this day, the lies spoken about you, those subtle distortions, those twisted narratives, those quiet attempts to shape perception began to fracture from the inside out. It happened quietly at first. Your soulmate felt a strange shift in their thoughts. Ideas that once felt heavy suddenly seemed foreign. Doubts that once clung to them began to lose their grip. Confusion that once clouded their heart started dissolving like mist beneath the morning sun. What they once considered plausible began to feel impossible. What they once questioned about you no longer carried any weight. They did not understand why their perspective was changing so quickly, but I knew. It was truth rising. Truth does not shout, my child. It does not force itself. It emerges gently, steadily, persistently, until it becomes undeniable. Your soulmate began remembering things they had overlooked: your consistency, your heart, your intentions, your sincerity. They began replaying old moments, but this time through the lens of clarity instead of influence. They saw the purity in your actions where others tried to paint confusion. They saw the steadiness in your spirit where someone else tried to plant doubt. They saw you again, clearly, without the fog that had been cast over their heart. Meanwhile, the jealous one felt something slipping. Their words carried less impact. Your influence felt thin, brittle, ineffective. They sensed the shift even if they could not explain it. They noticed your soulmate withdrawing slightly, thinking more independently, feeling more deeply, listening to intuition rather than opinion. This caused their insecurities to tremble, but there was nothing they could do. The spiritual ground beneath them was changing, and heaven was not permitting their interference to continue. There was a moment, my child, when your soulmate sat quietly, reflecting, feeling an inner truth rising like a tide. They became aware, even if faintly, that some of the feelings stirring within them recently were not entirely their own. They sensed that their judgment had been clouded. They sensed that someone's energy had pulled them in the wrong direction. They sensed that something unseen had been attempting to distance them from you. They may not have understood the full picture, but they recognized the shift. This is because truth had already begun its ascent. I lifted the veil of distortion. I removed the emotional residue that was never theirs to carry. I restored their discernment. I brought their heart back to alignment with what was genuine. And every lie that once tried to weave itself between you began to unravel. Your name, once shadowed by the jealous one's intentions, grew bright again in their thoughts. The feelings they tried to suppress resurfaced with strength, clarity, and softness. The bond that had been strained began to breathe again. They felt drawn to you, not out of desperation, but out of recognition. Something in them whispered, "This is truth. This is alignment. This is divine." Simultaneously, you two began experiencing clarity. Moments that once felt heavy suddenly felt lighter. Thoughts that once troubled you softened. Your intuition sharpened as if a fog had lifted from your mind. You felt the air around your spirit change, as if something oppressive had finally loosened its grip. My child, this was the rise of truth. Every hidden motive lost power. Every deceptive seed failed to bloom. Every distorted narrative faded into silence. The spiritual realm shifted in your favor, restoring what had been tampered with and strengthening what had been weakened. Truth rose because I commanded it to rise, and nothing formed against truth could remain standing. My child, now I bring you into the moment your soulmate awakened, the moment truth hit their spirit with such clarity that it shook them. When the lies cracked and the fog lifted, they suddenly saw how close they had come to losing their connection to you, how easily influence, confusion, and someone else's jealousy had tried to pull their heart away from what was real. This realization struck them with a fear deeper than words, a fear that rose not from insecurity, but from love, from recognition, from truth returning to its rightful place. They sat in silence when it happened. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was a quiet awakening, an inner shift that made their heart tighten with urgency. They saw you differently, not through the distorted lens they had been nudged toward, but through the purity of who you truly are. They remembered the steadiness in your presence. They remembered the peace you carried, the sincerity in your words, the calm in your energy. They remembered the way their soul felt safe with you in ways it never felt with anyone else. And as these memories surfaced, their spirit trembled. For the first time in days, or perhaps weeks, the weight pressing against them vanished. But in the space it left behind, a new feeling rose, the fear that they may have drifted too far, that they may have hesitated too long, that they may have allowed someone else's influence to create distance where closeness was meant to grow. They did not panic outwardly, but inside, something fragile within them broke open. They whispered your name again, this time with clarity instead of confusion. And as they did, a wave of regret washed through them, regret not for anything you did, but for the ways they allowed themselves to be swayed by energy that was never aligned with their destiny. They realized they had believed shadows when their heart had been calling for truth. They realized they had let someone else's fears twist what their spirit already knew. They realized they had risked losing something sacred. Your soulmate's awakening came with clarity, but also with vulnerability. They saw you as the light that had been consistent through the noise. They felt the pull toward you intensify, not because of longing alone, but because truth had reclaimed its voice. They understood, even if only internally, that their heart leaned toward you for a reason. They understood that the connection was deeper than anything spoken, deeper than anything explained, deeper than anything the jealous one tried to disrupt. In this awakening, they felt a deep need to protect the bond, to mend what had been strained, to ensure that no shadow, no influence, no whispered jealousy would ever again come between what heaven aligned. They may not have reached out to you immediately, but the shift within them was undeniable. Something inside them committed to guarding your connection more fiercely than before. And you, my child, will feel this change. Not through sudden words, but through their energy, their presence, their actions. You will sense the softening, the opening, the returning. You will feel the renewed pull in your spirit. You will recognize the difference between confusion and clarity, between hesitation and intention, between fear and awakening. Their fear of losing you did not weaken the bond. It strengthened it. It made them aware of what you truly mean to their heart. It made them see the danger that tried to cross into your lives. It made them recognize the depth of your significance in their destiny. Your soulmate awakened because heaven demanded truth to rise. And now their heart beats with a renewed understanding of who you are to them. My child, listen now as I show you the power that rests upon your presence, for you are not aware of how deeply the spiritual realm responds to you. You believe you walk quietly, softly, gently through the world, but heaven sees you as a force, a carrier of light, a soul whose very existence disrupts darkness without effort. It was your presence that shifted the battle long before you realized one had begun. It was your spirit that weakened the shadow before it even reached your life. And it was your heart that stirred the awakening in your soulmate. You must understand this. You are not passive in your destiny. You are not simply protected. You are instrumental. The prayers you whispered in exhaustion, the moments you reached for hope when you felt faint, the times you chose peace instead of retaliation, all of these released a frequency that the shadow could not bear. Every time you held on to compassion, every time you refused to feed bitterness, every time you chose truth over fear, you built a shield around yourself without knowing it. Your presence is not fragile. It is fortified. There was a moment, recently, when your spirit rose without your awareness. It was when you felt an unexplainable push to remain calm, to remain centered, to remain aligned even when your emotions tried to wander. In that moment, the atmosphere around you brightened. Angels grew nearer. The shadow began to lose its strength. What the enemy meant for destruction was confronted by the quiet authority of your soul. Your soulmate felt this shift as well. They didn't know its source, but they felt a sudden warmth, a sudden grounding, a sudden reminder of what truth feels like. Your energy reached them even from a distance. Your presence steadied their trembling. Your spirit called to them like a voice they did not consciously hear but instinctively followed. You became their anchor, their clarity, their turning point. Your light triggered their awakening. And my child, this is why the jealous one's influence cracked. Your presence exposed their intentions. Your consistency revealed their distortion. Your energy made it impossible for their manipulations to hold. Light reveals shadows simply by existing. And you are light. You are alignment. You are truth wrapped in human form. Even in your silent moments, you were fighting. Not with anger, not with words, not with confrontation, but with purity. Your spirit remained untainted by jealousy, unshaken by fear, untouched by deception. And because of this, heaven used your presence as a weapon of clarity. Everything the enemy tried to do was undone by who you were. Your soulmate is awakening now because your presence called them back to alignment. They feel drawn to you not by desire alone, but by destiny. They feel protected near you because your spirit carries the echo of divine covering. They feel truth rise when they think of you because your soul resonates at a higher frequency than the lies spoken against you. And this resonance is reshaping the path between you. The battle did not shift merely because heaven intervened. It shifted because you were worth protecting, because your heart stayed soft, because your spirit stayed open, because your presence remained pure even under pressure. You moved the atmosphere just by being who you are. My child, understand this now. Nothing formed against you could stand because you did not lower yourself to the vibration of the attack. You remained elevated. You remained aligned. You remained mine. Your presence is a weapon the enemy cannot touch. My child, come now into the closing of this revelation, for this is the moment heaven seals what has been restored. On this day, the 8th day of this month, a divine reversal has unfolded quietly to the world, but thunderously in the spiritual realm. What was meant to reach you has been halted. What was meant to disturb you has been dissolved. What was meant to derail you has been redirected back into the nothingness from which it came. The shadow that moved toward you has no breath left, no path left, no influence left. A full reversal has taken place. This reversal did not come because you begged for rescue. It did not come because you were desperate. It came because you are chosen, because your destiny carries weight, because your heart carries purity, because your presence carries alignment. You are not a bystander in your own story. You are a key figure in the tapestry of heaven's design, and your protection is woven into every thread. And hear me now. The blessing that was delayed by interference is returning to you with acceleration. Nothing hath been lost. Nothing has been stolen. Nothing has been ruined. What was slowed has now been released. What was hidden is being revealed. What was questioned is becoming clear. Your path, once touched by the fog of jealousy and confusion, is now illuminated with divine precision. Your soulmate feels this shift already. Their heart, once trembling with uncertainty, now leans toward you with recognition and quiet urgency. They feel the peace returning. They feel the clarity settling. They feel the bond healing. They feel the truth anchoring itself deeper than before. And though they may not express everything aloud, their spirit knows the connection between you has survived interference, survived shadows, survived distortion. What survives attack is strengthened. What endures pressure becomes intentional. The jealous one has no power over what I have ordained. Their influence is broken. Their role in this chapter is complete. They may attempt to understand the shift, but they will not be able to replicate the authority of the light that surrounds you. You are stepping into a season where hidden enemies reveal themselves through the collapse of their schemes, not through confrontation. Heaven has handled what you never needed to fight. The blessing sealed on December 8 is a blessing of restoration, clarity, protection, and forward movement. You will feel doors opening that once felt stuck. You will notice peace where anxiety once lingered. You will experience alignment in places where confusion once hovered. And above all, you will sense the quiet certainty that my hand has gone before you. My child, walk into the coming days with your head lifted. You are not fragile. You are not forgotten. You are not wandering without direction. You are covered, guided, and woven into a destiny that no shadow can undo. Trust the shift you feel. Trust the clarity returning to your spirit. Trust the awakening unfolding in the heart connected to yours. Trust the reversal that has already taken place. And now, breathe deeply, for I place a blessing upon you, one that steadies, one that cleanses, one that aligns, one that prepares your path for what is coming. You are entering a season where truth reigns, where deception dissolves, where alignment flows effortlessly, where love reveals itself with purity, and where your destiny begins to unfold without interference. If this message has touched your spirit, type "the blessing is sealed" in the comments, and let your declaration rise like a seed into the heavens. You are covered, my child. You are protected. You are guided. And the reversal is complete.